Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's webinar. I'm Lori Stevens with Laws Communications. Really want to thank everybody for being here. We have, I think we're expecting a little over 100 people, and I was looking through the registration list and so pleased to see that I think I probably know personally at least three-quarters of the people who are here. So welcome, friends, and I'm really glad to have you. For attending today's webinar, as a thank you for myself and Everbridge Nixle, I'm going to be sending everyone in attendance a special code that will allow you to extend the extra early bird rate of $449 for the Smile Conference to December 31st of this year. Otherwise, it's expiring for everybody else in just under a week, but you guys will be able to extend it if you'd like to go. And again, that's thanks to Everbridge Nixle. So they are sponsoring today's webinar. We'll be hearing from Everbridge Nixle after our main presenter. So the conference is April of next year in Long Beach and will be hosted by the Long Beach Police Department. And other than that, the only other thing I want to tell you folks is that we are recording today's webinar. Everyone will receive a link to the webinar. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker. Again, we have two presenters today. We will hear from Everbridge Nixle's Jim Gaither at the end of the presentation. Our main presenter is Sergeant Eric Gripp. Eric has been with the Philadelphia Police Department for 15 years. He currently serves as the department's digital and social media manager in the Public Affairs Unit. His duties include creating original content for the department's social media channels, which include Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat. Sergeant Gripp is also responsible for monitoring the department's 60 authorized officer-manned Twitter accounts, 21 district accounts, as well as providing training for new users. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Eric, before you start, I just want to remind everybody, though, that as you come up with questions, type them in at the bottom of your control panel, and we will entertain all questions for both speakers at the end of the webinar. Take it away, Sergeant Gripp.
Well, thank you, Lori, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Well, there I am. You're seeing my picture right now. So just to make this go as easy as can be for everybody, just try to picture me as your favorite celebrity or somebody better looking than the person you're seeing in front of you. It'll make this much easier to absorb. So let's get started here. All right, so what we're going to be talking about right now is managing social media during large-scale events. Now, we're going to talk about three scenarios that we actually, three situations rather, that we went through here. And when we're talking about a large-scale event, we're not necessarily just talking about a large concert or the Democratic National Convention, which Philadelphia had the privilege to host this past summer. We're going to be talking about some other large-scale events which they could be crime-related. They could be something which could have much to do with infrastructure in the area. These are events that are going to gather a whole lot of attention, not just on social media, but through traditional media. And I'm going to share with you some experiences that we had and some things that we learned, some mistakes that we made, and some best practices. At least we're hoping they are. So briefly, Lori touched on a lot of this. I'm a 15-year police veteran. Obviously, I like repeating slides. My past assignments in the Philadelphia Police Department before coming to the Public Affairs Office, I worked in the 3rd District, and for those that are familiar with Philadelphia, that's South Philly, where Pat's and Geno's are at, and the 22nd District, which is North Philadelphia, and for those who don't know the city, that's Temple University. That's where their campus is at. I'm currently assigned to the PPD Public Affairs Unit. I've been here since May of 2013. And my job title, I'm the digital and media manager for the department, and I also work as a spokesperson / public information officer. And more important than anything, I have a fantastic office with multiple monitors and wood paneling. So for those of you who are watching this through the magic of the internet, you're seeing what I'm seeing right now, and don't you wish you had an office like this? So they say there's not money to be made in social media. I say, get a gander at that. So moving along, let's talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Police Department and what we do on social media. As of right now, we're on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. We have a program that's called the Philadelphia Police SafeCam program, which we work with the FBI. And we'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later. And part of the SafeCam program is what we call PPT Divert, which stands for Digital Imaging Video Response Teams. It'll make sense in a little bit. And all of that covers what the Philadelphia Police Department handles on social media. So the first situation that I want to talk about, and I hate to say I like to talk about this because this was a tragic event in our city's recent history, but I like to talk about it because it occurred right after, within, I think it was 3 weeks after I was assigned to the Public Affairs Office, and it's become pretty much our #1 example as to the power of social media and how harnessing it can be extremely beneficial for government agencies. And what we're talking about is the Center City building collapse. And for those who aren't familiar with it, it occurred on June 5th of 2013 at 22nd and Market Streets in Philadelphia, more specifically 2138 Market Street. And just to give you a little brief history of this, happened at 10:43 a.m. There were 6 people that unfortunately lost their lives when this event occurred and 14 that were injured in the initial collapse. Basically, and this is a very, very quick summary of events, there was a Salvation Army thrift store that was open for business at the time of the collapse. And if you can see behind it, where I'm highlighting right now, there was a building back there that was scheduled for demolition. And as an individual was attempting to take down a wall, the building collapsed and fell onto the Salvation Army building that you're seeing right here. As you can see, there were some real, just horrifying images of the devastation that took place. What you're seeing here is actually a picture before the building collapsed. You're seeing the building in the background here, and here's the thrift store right there. And this is what it looked like. I believe this was the next day after it collapsed, and just complete and total devastation. So the reason I like to talk about this event was while this was going on, the morning this was happening, I just so happened to be giving an interview with our local PBS station about the importance of social media and how police departments were hoping to use this newfangled technology going forward in order to connect with our citizens. And as we were in the middle of this interview, several blocks away, this was going on. And the example that I always like to use is I was sitting in front of my computer and they were filming B-roll. And for those who don't know what B-roll is, it's just the background footage that they're going to take to put into a story. Usually it's somebody answering a phone or typing on a computer, something that's relevant to the story at hand. They were filming B-roll of myself typing on a computer and looking at our Twitter feed. And in the background, I heard our police radio starting to make a ton of noise. And almost at the same time, our Twitter feed started to go just totally ballistic. It started moving like a stock ticker. And what I noticed were the phrases that were coming across there were terrorism, bomb, explosion, chaos. So, immediately we stopped filming. They actually left to see what was going on. And we told them, listen, there's this report of a building that had collapsed at 2130 Market Street. We got to get to work here. And one of the first things I did was I started gathering a lot of these words that were coming up at the same time, and terrorism being the main one. Now, once we had a fairly good idea that what had happened here was not an act of terrorism, it was an industrial accident, one of the very first things we did was both on Facebook and Twitter. This is a brief look at this is an outdated slide of our Facebook page. But one of the first things we did was we went right onto Facebook and sent a message across saying, at this time, the building collapse at 22nd and Market Street appears to be an industrial accident. Please remain clear of the area to allow the first responders room to work. Now, what was amazing about this was almost within seconds of us putting out this message, in real time, we were able to watch the social media chatter slow down. And because, let's face it, people, this was during the day. A lot of folks were at work, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, people when they're at work, they tend to be signed into several of their social media accounts if their company allows them to do so, or even if they don't allow them to do so and the sites haven't been blocked, they're signed in. So when people start seeing rumors and information coming across social media, they share it, they repeat it. So within minutes of this building going down, as soon as the word terrorism was out there, panic. started to just go across Philadelphia, local Philadelphia social media, and of course it was being shared almost instantly. So one of the first things that you have to do, and in a large-scale event like this, and everybody wants to be first. Obviously, being first is important. It's more important to the media than it is to us as a government agency. We want to be fast, but more importantly, it's about accuracy. So something that we always do whenever we're handling a large-scale event like this, of course, we're going to listen to police radio. We're going to try to get as much information as we can from people that are out there. But us, as the public relations unit, we're going to make sure that we actually have somebody who's out there on that scene that can give us direct information in an event like this. Because if we put out the wrong information, just imagine the chaos that you can cause. So what we did during this event was our PIO, which is Lieutenant John Stanford, he's the Philadelphia Police Department spokesperson, he actually went out to the scene, and we were in contact. I was back in the office sending out all this information through our social media channels. So if I heard a rumor, if I saw something going on social media, I could get instant confirmation from somebody who was out there and somebody that was in a position to make these decisions. And it's about accuracy. All right, people will appreciate that. It's not so much just if you keep putting information out there and letting it fly, but it's wrong or it's correction after correction after correction, you're going to turn people off. So I'm just going to go through a couple slides real quick, and this is showing how we use social media during this event. For those that don't know, Google Maps, fortunately I've gotten a little bit better at it since than I was back in 2013, but Google Maps will allow you to edit and create your own maps free in the software. So what we wanted to do is we just wanted to start giving people an idea of what was actually happening out on the scene. So we put together this map really quick, let folks know, due to the building collapse in Center City, the following areas currently block the traffic. We put the locations down there, but we also, again, we showed it on the map. For people who aren't familiar, Center City is a lot of tourists that are out there who aren't exactly familiar with just street names. We wanted to give them something visual so they could have an idea of where this was happening and what the affected areas were. Residents will be allowed into their homes, but vehicular traffic will be limited. Avoid the area if at all possible. This was obviously an important message that we wanted to get out. People were panicking. So, I like to say that, hey, within a few minutes we were able to get out the information that this was not a terrorist attack. That doesn't change the fact that there were dozens, if not hundreds of people who saw terrorist attack, saw the location, and went running out of their place of business or wherever they happened to be to go down to the scene because they had a friend or a loved one down there. So obviously those people, the messaging hadn't reached yet. So we wanted to make sure we were continuing to put out updated information as we were getting it to let folks know that you might have a large crowd of people that are showing up down there. We wanted the media to see these things too. And we wanted it to be reported everywhere that residents will be allowed into their homes. All right, we wanted to make sure that that got out there. And we also, at the same time, wanted to let people know, stay the heck out of the area. All right, we obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So, we're just giving people a heads up. If you're coming down here, hopefully you're a resident or you have some kind of interest because you're probably going to get stuck. Now, obviously, we also use Twitter to do pretty much the same thing. And I have the same tweet coming up twice here. But this is just another example of how we were utilizing social media during this event to basically make sure that everybody, the information they were receiving, what you don't want to do is tell people that, hey, everything's okay, there's nothing here to see. But what social media gives you the ability to do is, you can see what's trending. You can see what a number of folks are talking about, what they're seeing, what they're observing, and if use your best instincts on this. If a lot of folks are saying, hey, this the example that I'm using here, where's the mayor at? Our mayor at the time was Mayor Michael Nutter. Now, he was down at the scene, but there was a lot of chatter on social media, a lot of people that were panicking, and we started to have rumors that were growing again that this might be a terrorist attack because, well, if everything's really okay like they're saying, then how come the mayor's not down there? So I was able to see this information going on, and I was able to call Lieutenant Stanford, who was, again, down at the scene, and let him know, listen, obviously, we can't just immediately quell every fear of every person out there, but there are a number of people that are concerned that they don't see the mayor, so they think that something is still going on. And he was able to tell me right away, hey, good timing, the mayor is going to be giving a press conference shortly. So I was able to put that information out there, not directly respond to 30 people who were asking where the mayor was. And they weren't even necessarily asking us. They were just talking in generalizations. We were able to put out this message and calm a lot of that down, and at least was able to stop that part of the rumor mill. And, as we got closer, again, Mayor Nutter and city officials to address the media about the building collapse at 22nd and Market Street in 4 minutes. It was just keeping people updated. And again, this is another map. This was the second one that I did, and obviously I learned a little bit more about Google Maps in that 1 hour period. But as the area that was around the building collapse continued to shrink, sometimes it was growing, it was moving all over the place, we were able to put out updated maps and telling people where to stay away from. And this is kind of a ridiculous slide to transition to, but this is going to become a very important point, at least for us. 3 days after this event took place, it just so happened to be National Donut Day. Now, I know every day seems to be National Something Day. I don't know who declares these things anymore, but it turns out National Donut Day was actually a legitimate thing that was started back in 1938 by the Salvation Army. Now, needless to say, the city was in kind of a funk after this event took place, as pretty much any municipality would be. And anybody who's followed the Philadelphia Police Department on social media knows that we take a pretty, I'd say, lighthearted approach to how we handle things. So this wasn't much of a stretch or much of a transition for us, but obviously, we have to get back to our day-to-day operations, and it was looking for some kind of transition, and it just so happened that a few days later was National Donut Day, and this gave us an opportunity to not just make fun of ourselves, which people always like, with the, obviously with the old donut cliche, but at the same time, this was linked to the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army was actually the organization that started this program, National Donut Day. So, I don't want to say that it's always good to try to make a heartless segue into going back into business, but we have to find levity. We're talking about very serious situations, and it's very important that you want to keep people tuned in. People are expecting a certain level of service from your social media, and you want to make sure that they're staying on board. And that's what this was about. It was just bringing some levity back to the situation. And moving on, I'm going to talk briefly about another incident, which is kind of, it's similar to the building collapse and what happened on social media. This was a school shooting, and I use that term in the loosest way possible. You'll hear why in a minute. This occurred on January 17th, 2014 at the Delaware Valley Charter High School. And basically what had happened there, before I get to that next slide, we received information right around dismissal time that there had been a shooting inside the Delaware Valley Charter High School in the gymnasium. And right away, we saw it on social media. It was coming out, and a lot of it, unfortunately, was being reported by the local media, who were putting out reports of gunshots at Delaware Valley Charter High School. It was within a few minutes that gunshots inside the school turned into an active shooter inside of the school. Now, fortunately, we had school police officers that were already in the building when this took place, and again, as before, Lieutenant Stanford immediately jumped into his car to head down there to see what was going on. Now, once we were reasonably sure of what was happening there, we wanted to start sending a few messages out right away, because these are the problems that you're probably going to experience every single time you have an event like this. And just like before with the building collapse, people want to know what's going on with their loved ones. They see the information, they might not even necessarily process it right, but they panic. And what do we want to do? We want to go to our loved ones. And this is an issue that we were having while we were trying to secure the perimeter around this school and make sure that we had access available for all the emergency services personnel that to come and go. The entire area was just being converged upon by neighbors, family members of students that went there. So that's something that we wanted to put out right away, was obviously attention parents and students of Delaware Valley Charter High School. Please report to Fisher Avenue and Old York Road. Do not go to this school. Now, we all talk about creating a staging area for the media at a large-scale event like this, and also setting one up for family, friends, and loved ones so they can be briefed and have a place to wait. But the information isn't always going to reach them right away. Now, we know putting this out on social media, the old way to do it would have been, well, let's just call all the news stations, let's send out a blast, a press release to everybody real quick. But we're doing it that way. There's just so many more failure points that are going to be there. You call up a news station, you talk to the person who's running the news desk and say, hey, listen, can you please put something out saying for all the parents that go to Fisher and Old York Road, that individual might have 10 other things that they're doing right now, and 5-10 minutes could go by before it even goes out. We noticed very, very early in the game, if we put stuff out on social media, and usually attaching our shield to it is our way of saying that this is going to be serious, the media picks up on it right away. And you already have the loudest megaphone you could ever hope to own. And those are people on social media. They will share this stuff right away. So hopefully by the time the person gets to the scene and they don't know what to do other than run to the school to try to get a hold of their loved one, there's going to be 10 people already at the scene already who have seen this post on social media. So as this was going on, and I should mention, this is probably important, that what had happened here was there was a shooting outside of the school. One of the bullets went into a window in the gymnasium and went inside. So all of the story about the active shooter is just a rumor, but it caused this massive amount of panic all throughout the city, so much so that within 20 minutes of it being reported here, it was being reported nationally on CNN and Fox News. They were using the local news station's helicopter feeds overhead and were reporting it as an active shooter situation. Now, at this time, we already knew that that was not the case, but this became a situation where we were using social media in order to stop that flow of bad information. So what we did right away was we let people know, once we were reasonably sure Lieutenant Stanford was on scene, this is not an active shooter. In fact, the individual who's responsible for this is not here anymore. So we were just following social, we were looking what was going on, what people were saying, and just letting folks know it's not over. We're still looking for people, but as far as the active shooter happening, it's good. Don't worry about it, all right? Go to this staging area, report out there, everything is going to be okay. And, you can see as this continued to unfold, we used a number of our accounts. And, obviously you start looking at the retweets, you start looking at the shares. These are media folks. We weren't just using our main account. We were utilizing everything that we had at our disposal, because those of you out there who run businesses or government agencies where you have multiple accounts, you don't necessarily have the same followers on all the accounts. So we tried to retweet and share and just put the message out as many different ways as we could. And that's how we started doing things. Staging area for the media, Broad and Fisher. Now, remember, this doesn't mean that we stop doing things the traditional way. This means that we just continue to utilize every tool at our disposal, and what we've learned and what we continue to see time and time again is when we want something we want a message to get out fast, we put it out on social, and then we send out the press release. And I don't know if I included the slide or the slide in here, but one of the tweets that we had to put out was, and this occurred actually both in the building collapse and during this school shooting. There were so many news helicopters that were overhead making so much noise, our folks on the ground were having trouble communicating. So requests came in several times over police radio and of course we know that the helicopter pilots are listening, to please try to get the heck out of the area. We're trying to work down here and we can't hear ourselves think. So they were going over the radio, the helicopters remained. We were calling all the news desks. They were saying, okay, we'll notify our pilots immediately. The helicopters remained. We sent out a tweet saying, attention media, our folks are having trouble hearing, and they're not able to complete their duties in an acceptable manner down there. Could you please back up? They were gone like within minutes of the tweets going out there. All right, so I don't want to say that it's you're publicly shaming people or anything like that. It's just, remember, people are people. You have 500 things going on at any given time, and what is urgent to you might not be urgent to somebody else. But when you put this out there on social media, it's no longer just us calling and saying, hey, could you please move those helicopters? Now they're receiving hundreds of mentions and retweets from again, our biggest megaphone, our citizens, saying, guys, get out of there. Please, the police need room to work. And this is something else that we put out there, where Lieutenant Stanford, who was out at the scene during that event, he had an opportunity while he was live and national media was covering this. We had a pretty good idea who the shooter was. And he said, turn yourself in, get it over with. And, you know, it sounds corny, but, you know, he delivered it very forcefully. And at the time, I'm looking on social, and I guess, you know, a number of people that happened to be watching the press conference were saying, wow, that's cool, that sounds like an action movie. So, never give up an opportunity like that. Lieutenant Stanford's on Twitter. I put his handle in, I used his name, put his line out there, I sent it out from my account, I retweeted it from our main account, and it actually got a lot of attention. It got a lot of shares. They put it out both on Facebook as well, and we were able to identify where this person was. I believe within an hour, we knew exactly where he was at. Now, next situation I'm going to talk about is the abduction of Carlisha Freeland Gaither. And what I'm going to now, normally I would show you the video, but for the sake of brevity and bandwidth, I'm not going to do that. But for those of you who aren't familiar, Carlisha Freeland Gaither, this, I'm trying to think, hold on one sec here, let me find my next slide. This actually occurred, it was back in November of 2014, and we had a situation where this young woman, she was returning home from work on the corner of Green Street in Coulter. It's in the city of Philadelphia's Germantown area. This was around 9:40 p.m. on a Sunday. And she was returning home. It was actually after a visit from her, she was visiting her godchildren. And if you can see right where my arrow was up here, she's walking down the street here, at which time an individual happened to park his car right here, right where I'm pointing. And this camera was actually outside of a rec center. And the camera was registered with our SafeCam program that we mentioned in the beginning, that I mentioned rather at the beginning of this presentation. And very briefly, what SafeCam is a database that we have. It's a voluntary system where we allow businesses and homeowners to register their private cameras with the Philadelphia Police Department. So what happens is if there's a situation where, you know, some sort of crime or event where we were hoping that there'd be video footage, it occurs that we can just enter that address into our database, and it will give us a list of every single camera that we have registered around there. Not only will it give us a list of the cameras that are around there, it'll let us know what kind of equipment that they have in there, as well as the name and contact information of the individual who owns the camera. So the old-fashioned way of doing things, where a crime would occur, we'd get out there, we'd look all over the place for cameras, and we'd knock on the door, hope somebody was there, and if they were nice enough to let us view their footage, hope that we had an idea of how to not just use their footage, but how to ascertain it, you know, how to actually get it off of their recorder. So with SafeCam, we were able to plug in this address, and we found out where these cameras were at. We knew what kind of equipment was in there, and we were able to gather it within an hour, I believe, of the actual kidnapping taking place. And we got that video out there, and you know, I don't want to say I encourage you to view this if you haven't already. It is just, your jaw will drop when you just see how completely and totally terrifying this footage is of a woman who could be anybody's sister, mother, daughter, just walking, minding her own business, as the old saying goes, and a completely random person runs up to her, grabs her, struggles with her all the way from the top of the block down to right here, throws her into the back of her car, and drives off. Now, we were able to get this footage out there, and it was picked up, and it went national. I mean, as you can see down here, I think this is well over 2.5 million right now, but it was around 1.5 million within a day and a half of this video being released. It was just so terrifying to see that we just wanted to share it and share it and share it, and utilized, again, that great megaphone that we have. Because the old way of doing this, we'd send our footage to a news station, the news station would show it, and hey, you hope somebody happened to be watching this at this time, you know, at the time that it was shown. But social media obviously allowed us to just continue to push it. And, you know, what we'd like to talk about was through the use of SafeCam, PPD Divert, which is our imaging response teams who were able to not only find out where the cameras were right away, but go out there, know what kind of equipment they were facing, and download it really quick. And through YouTube, we put it out through all of our social media. It was 3 days later, not even 72 days later, Carlisha was found. And she was found in Maryland in the back seat of the car of the individual who kidnapped her, a 37-year-old male by the name of Delvin Barnes. It was in Jessup, Maryland. And except for a couple superficial injuries, she was unharmed. And this was such a big event in Philly, and even nationally. I can't even begin to describe the amount of attention that this received on social media. So something that we wanted to do after the fact was, as always, it's bringing levity to these situations, and at the same time appreciating your citizens that are on board, that are going through you with this ordeal, whether the ordeal is a horrible situation of the building collapse or a concert that's coming to town. They're with you, obviously, along for this ride. So we wanted to let people see this was the happy outcome. This is what is possible when everything you might have been seeing online or hearing the talking head say was, this girl's probably not going to make it. These things don't usually end well. We wanted to show people that it was possible. And as silly as it is, again, going back to giving levity, we wanted to let everybody know, thank you. We really thank you, people all throughout the world, for the help, the help of our citizens. Social media is great. You can have the most entertaining, interesting things in the world, but if nobody's watching it, nobody's looking at it, nobody's sharing it, it really doesn't matter. So we wanted to make sure that we were thanking folks and we were letting them know that this is why we can sometimes have happy endings. All right, now, I know that these are the two big events that are in Philadelphia, and this is probably what a lot of people had in mind about this webinar when we were going to be talking about a large-scale event. In 2015, Pope Francis came to Philadelphia, and in 2016, this past summer, the Democratic National Convention was here in Philly. And what you're seeing in this picture, and the reason I use this picture is because this was probably when I had my awakening as to what I see to be the most valuable tool in our social media arsenal right now during these large-scale events, is live streaming. And what you're seeing in this picture, this is this goofy-looking fellow right here. This is me. I was out on the scene following the commissioner around many times throughout the DNC and live streaming out to folks what was going on. And that's what's happening in this picture here. So you can see the Police Commissioner Ross is very happy to have to listen to me yarble on for another few minutes. But what I want to go over real quick with these things, and you're going to hear all kinds of best practices. Everybody's saying that this is the way that you should handle an event like this. Let's face it, all of us are just learning right now. I mean, it's kind of hard to have a best practice when your sample size is so small. But let's talk about the things that we have done repeatedly, and when we failed to do them, we've had problems. First and foremost is coordination with other agencies. And that comes down to, in a large-scale event, let's use the DNC, for example, we had the Secret Service that was obviously involved in this, the FBI. We had several local police departments that were providing manpower to us during the event. We had the Philadelphia Fire Department. I mean, you name it, Secret Service, if I didn't say them already, you name it, they were out there. So you have to think a little bit differently now. Information that has been confirmed through all of your sources, and every channel that you have to go through before you're putting it out there might be completely and totally contrary to what another agency, which actually may have jurisdiction during your event, is saying. So if I ask my PIO, hey, is 3rd Street open? And he says, yeah, I'm standing out here now, it's open. I tweet out 3rd Street's open. Meanwhile, the FBI has something out saying avoid 3rd Street at all costs. We're going to be closing it in the next 10 minutes. So for those that aren't familiar, during these events, we usually have fusion centers, your JOC or your JIC, as they're called. Make sure that you have somebody that is in that center who is able to confirm any information that is put out over social media. So it's not just about conflictions, it's about redundancy. Folks are going to tune you out really quick if you have 10 agencies saying the same thing all the time. There's no earthly reason why, if the police department says 3rd Street is closed, the Philadelphia Fire Department is going to should say 3rd Street is closed, and then we retweet the fire department on the police department account saying 3rd Street is closed, and so forth and so on, and it just turns into this mess, and people stop listening. All right, so you want to avoid redundancy. You want to, ahead of time, plan these things out and come up with a plan. Basically, who is going to handle what sort of situation. I mean, now we see as a police department, we'd like to think that ultimately everything comes back to the police. You know, if the cat's in the tree, call 911, I need a cop out here. My pizza was bad, call 911, get the cops out here. A lot of that happens and continued to happen during the Democratic National Convention, where there's a pothole in my street. I tried calling the water department or the streets department. Their line's busy. Can you guys come out here and fix this? What we talked about ahead of time was everybody was going to stay in their lane as best as possible. There were certain events about there were certain instances pertaining to the DNC. In Philadelphia, we have an organization called the Office of Emergency Management. They were going to be the lead on pretty much everything that took place with the event. So if a road had to close, it came through them. If there was going to be a weather event which was going to cause something to be canceled or delayed, it went through them. We would retweet their information. Now, things that were of public safety concern, reports of threats, reports of people being injured, the police department, we would handle those things. And just planning out those few things ahead of time can avoid a ton of redundancy, and it's going to make sure that your audience stays with you the entire time. And that moves to the next thing, which is do not panic. And do not panic, and you see the next point is accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. Those are probably the two most important things. Now, flip-flop them all you want. I'm going to go with panic because that's what we have a tendency to do. And it's unfortunate, but in the best interest of trying to get folks to relax, we can sometimes put out information that isn't quite right. And when you put that out, and as we discussed earlier, when you put that out and you have to go back and change it, you're doing yourself an enormous disservice. That doesn't mean if you put something out and you find out that it's wrong to just, hey, let it fly. But if you start doing it all the time, people are going to stop trusting what you have to say, and you know, any gains that you make through social media, you're going to lose them. So don't panic. Even if something terrible is going on, a building is collapsing, or there, God forbid, is a terrorist attack and people should stay out of the area, don't lose your mind about it. All right, you don't want to start retweeting people that could potentially be tweeting pictures of injured individuals down on the ground, or people who are putting quick videos out of screaming, cursing, and yelling and crying. You don't want to incite panic in your public. All right, we have to be in control all the time. All right, and I don't mean that because, hey, we're the police and do what we say. For public safety. All right, that doesn't mean lie. That doesn't mean tell people there's nothing here to see when there is. It means just take a breath, really assess what's going on, and ask yourself, do I need to send this out? And if I do need to send it out, how can I send it out and minimize as much damage as possible? And that leads right into the next point, which is accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. I'm not going to continue to harp on this. Everything that you're putting out, do your best to make sure that it's accurate. Okay? We don't want to have folks continue to pass out bad information, especially when it comes from us. And if you remember one thing from this presentation, besides how bad my picture was in the beginning or how disorganized I've appeared during it, I want you to remember this, which is building a community before you need a community. It sounds like a cliche, but the most important thing that you can have is your online community when you're trying to get this information out there. If you're trying to build up your social media audience before a large event like this, you know, days before, weeks before, it's already too late. It's already too late. All right, you want people that are out there that trust you ahead of time, that are engaged with you ahead of time. So when you put information out there, you can be pretty much rest assured that it is going to get shared and it's going to end up before a lot of eyes. All right, so what this comes down to is, how do you build a community before you need a community? I mean, in Philadelphia, this is the way we do it. We try to remain as lighthearted as we can. There's so much white noise that is out there on the internet. I mean, and social media, while it's a large part of it, that's just that. It's a part of it. People have so many distractions today. So why the heck would people be looking at the Philadelphia Police Department's Facebook page? So just what it came down to is just trying to keep people entertained, give them a reason to look at our page when there isn't a large event happening or there isn't some kind of catastrophe going on in the city. We want people on the page so when these events happen, they know right away that they can go to our page. It's already there, they're already following us, and let's face it, when the bad thing does happen, this is going to be served up on their timeline now because they're frequent viewers of our page, and without getting into how the algorithms work on all the social media channels, the more you go to a page on your own, the more it's going to be shown to you. All right, so these are just some examples of some of the things that we put out on our pages, and obviously it can't just be, you got to take some risks. A lot of police departments, government agencies, and legacy businesses, they play it safe, and obviously, hey, there's nothing wrong with it, but as they like to say too, no risk, no reward, right? Well, police departments seem to be using their social media for two things in the past. One was putting out blotter, crime, missing persons, information like that, and what I only half-jokingly refer to as police propaganda. A picture like this, which is a nice picture, it was a nice event, but, I'm talking about the cop helping the little old lady crossing the street. The cops at the community event. I'm not saying it's bad to put those things out, and you should put those things out. People need to see the good works that the police department's doing, but it can't be the only thing that you're putting out, and you certainly can't just put it out when something bad is happening, your police department's getting some bad press, and let me try and change the subject real quick. I try to keep us lighthearted. I try to keep us just all over the map as far as our content goes. And just one more example of it on Twitter. We have, right now, we have 60 officers that tweet for the department under their first name and last name, which gives people the ability to talk to our department, not just as the Philadelphia Police Department or the Wizard of Oz, basically. We allow people to have a peek behind the curtain and see who some of our officers are who are out there. And we have them from all different ranks, all the way up from the police commissioner down to our patrol officers on the street. So while somebody might not be comfortable sharing information with the Philadelphia Police Department, maybe they can find somebody who they're comfortable with for whatever reason. And we encourage our folks to be themselves on there. As you can see, this is one of our recently retired captains talking about his belly fat. But anyway, this is the other example I want to give you real quick. This was PPD K9 Thor, and this is one of our K9 officers, and I created a Twitter account for him because I figured there's going to be a number of people who, no matter what, are never going to follow the Philadelphia Police Department. They have no interest in us whatsoever. However, there's a lot of folks out there who are animal lovers, and oh look, it's a cute dog. And that's basically what Thor became. I never thought I would find myself talking in dog on Twitter when I went through the police academy, but here I am. And I just want to give you a real quick stat about Thor. This, again, is an old slide. I think Thor right now is just under 2,000 followers. But when I did this slide and when I checked this, he had 1,767 followers, 95% of which did not follow our main account or any of our other accounts. So what does that tell you? No matter how much you try, no matter how funny, how witty you think you are, you're not going to be able to appeal to everybody. So you want to try to appeal to as many folks as you can, reach as many people as you can. And Thor, 9 times out of 10, is talking in dog, saying, scratch my belly, here's a picture of me chewing on this chew toy. And every so often I'm squeezing in a wanted picture, retweeting it from our main account. And you'd be surprised the number of tips that we've received from folks that are just following Thor and nothing else, because they'd never think to follow a police department webpage, any of his social media channels. They just think, hey, I live in a nice neighborhood. Nothing bad ever happens here. Why would I look at what a police department's talking about? And in the middle of all their dog pictures, here's a wanted person for a burglary, and guess who's their next-door neighbor's daughter's new boyfriend? And we're getting tips that way. So, obviously, we're also on YouTube. You can check out what we're doing at youtube.com/Philadelphia Police. We're also on Snapchat. Kind of stay away from that for right now. But something I briefly wanted to show, and unfortunately, I'm not able to send audio over during my screen share here. But during the Democratic National Convention, this is when we began live streaming. And I'm going to mute these because I can hear myself and the rest of you can't. But as this was going on, as rumors were starting to spread about crowds and fights and riots going down on our various locations throughout the DNC, I was on a bike. I would ride over there and just start live streaming from there and letting people know, hey, this is what's happening out here. I'm not saying, hey, you might be hearing rumors of the end of the world at 12th and Arch. I just happen to be out at 12th and Arch, and it's a live stream. This isn't fake. This isn't something we edited afterwards to try to show that nothing's going on. And I just talked to people and let them know what was happening. And right now, this is a very valuable tool because Facebook is all about making sure that a number of your viewers are served up this content. 12,000 people saw this video. So that's now 12,000 people that know that there's really nothing bad going on at 12th and Arch. I was following along, riding on my bike as some of these protests were happening. And as I would see reports of looting and rioting and all these things, I would just start a live stream from there and say, here we are out here. Protest is peaceful. You know, judge it how you want. You know, this is live right now. If something goes wrong, you'll see it. This isn't anything we can hide. And things began to calm down. And if you start to look down here, look at some of these numbers. 30,000 views, 44,000 views, 24,000 views. This was a live stream that we were down there, we were down at the event, and a young man just started to play trumpet for us. And it was just an amazing moment that we were able to capture live. And it got 122,000 views and was shared all over the country and went viral and got a lot of good attention to our page. And that's all what it comes down to. It's getting eyes on your product. All right, whatever your product might be. And in the case of a large event like this, it could be keeping people safe. You know, it could be telling people to avoid an area. It can be sharing devastating news with folks, but at the same time, giving them a way to keep their wits about them, letting them know where to go, letting them know where they can receive help. And, you know, afterwards, we can start to gather some of these things together, and you kind of have like a living document of what happened during that event. And it's so useful after the fact to see when we said this was the response. But when we did that, look what the response was there. So again, I'm just going to end it with this. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. But this is what I want you to remember. Okay, it's just important to have your community before you need your community. And thank you so much for your time, everybody.
That's a great, great point. And I think if they remember one thing, that's probably the best thing out of the whole presentation, although it was absolutely brilliant. I want to know, does K9 Thor use an iBone when he tweets?
I thought, you know what? I thought I used pretty much every dog pun there was, and there's one left.
I got that from a UK cop years ago. I'm so glad to finally have the chance to use it. That was absolutely brilliant, and I thank you so much. As we switch over to our next presenter, this is going to be a much shorter presentation. We have just 11 minutes left, so I can tell you right now that we're probably going to go a little over in order to squeeze the questions in. We do have a few questions. Hopefully, Eric, you can stick around. I know you got stuff going on there in Philly. When don't you, right?
Sure.
But we're probably going to finish the next presentation in 10 minutes, and then we'll take questions. So our second presenter today is Jim Gaither, who is part of the Everbridge team, and which is the sponsor of today's webinar. So thank you to Jim, and thank you to everybody at Everbridge Nixle for allowing us to spend this time with you and with Eric. He works with hundreds of law enforcement departments on communications policy and resident outreach. Jim specializes in opt-in strategy and working closely with public safety agencies to reach the residents quickly and effectively. Thank you, Jim. Go ahead. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you, Sergeant Gripp, and thank you, everyone on the call. And honestly, I'll probably just take 5 minutes or so of your time. A lot of what Sergeant Gripp has spoken about, I typically talk a lot about building your community beforehand, just like that. So I'm not going to sort of remake that point. We all, agree that that's very important. I do want to just talk about a tool, an extra tool that you can use in addition to social media, and you may already be using Everbridge Nixle, but I just wanted to share a few slides with you and talk a little bit about that. But before I do that, I just want to say, coincidentally, I was actually born and raised in Philadelphia, and I lived through everything that Eric just talked about. I lived just a few blocks away from Salvation Army when that wall collapsed. I remember the Del Valle High shooting, the Germantown kidnapping. I am a follower of the Philadelphia Police Department on Twitter and Facebook, although I do not follow Thor, but I'm going to remedy that right after this call. So I can attest personally to the great information that was coming out during all of these events or incidents, except for Pope Francis. I actually hightailed it out of town down to Disney World that week, just because I wasn't ready for, 500,000, 1 million people coming to town. But I do want to talk, again, 5 minutes of your time and then we'll take any questions about improving public safety communications. Specifically, let me just tap on here. Specifically, Sergeant Gripp talked about the great use of social media, Twitter, Facebook, live streaming. I often talk about the importance of that, but also the importance of what I refer to as diversifying your notification portfolio, because as everyone on this call knows, no one channel is 100%, right? Channels fail when you send information out. A lot of people are on social media like Twitter and Facebook. A lot of people are not. Twitter and Facebook are fantastic channels for notifications, but they are, what's known as a pull channel, right? Often people have to open up the app and go through their feed, which, is often cluttered with pictures of grandmom's birthday party and, graduation photos. So sometimes when you really want to get information out about, avoid this intersection, or this is why the helicopters are in the air, sometimes you may need to supplement those pull channels with more push or active notifications like texting, like email. I'll talk about Google Alerts and our partnership with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. But three things that I kind of wanted to get through right now is the way to expand the outreach to your citizens by offering them a way to subscribe to your notifications directly from their cell phones. They can do that one of two ways. Number one is they can simply pull out their phone through Everbridge Nixle and text their zip code to a short number. If you text your zip code, and I'll go into this more in a moment, to that short number, you're automatically subscribed to receive text message notifications right on your cell phone. So if you need someone to act now, and you can't wait for them to jump onto, their Twitter app or their Facebook page or check their email, this is a great way of doing it. Another way is if you do have a huge event coming up in the area, you can create a keyword for it. Pope Francis, text, Pope Francis to that number. And now people who just want to receive text messages letting them know that there's a first aid station here, or the barrier, on Ben Franklin Parkway near 18th Street is down, so avoid that. You can do that just by texting a keyword. And then we also integrate with social media, so you can think of us as like a media hub. So instead of logging into one social media account, then another, writing your message multiple times, then maybe trying to send a text message or an email, you do it all from one page, and you push out to Twitter and Facebook simultaneously. So as Sergeant Gripp mentioned earlier, sometimes resources are limited, time is limited. You want to do everything at once as quickly as you can. We let you do that. When Lori introed us at the top of this, she talked about Everbridge Nixle. So Everbridge acquired Nixle a couple of years ago. Everbridge, known for emergency notifications. Nixle, often by PIOs and known more for day-to-day routine, engaging your community. Hey, there's a DUI checkpoint here, at the end of the month, or avoid this area because of maybe a traffic accident. So we've brought those two technologies together. So you have sort of top of the line emergency notification if you need to get information out about maybe that, that kidnapping in Germantown, with a picture of the victim, as well as maybe a sketch of the suspect or a screenshot of security video, but also that day-to-day notification that people opt in by texting their zip code or by texting their that keyword. So I want to speak a second about texting your zip code. When you pull out your phone and you text your zip code to the number 888-777, anyone on the call can do that right now. If you pull out your phone, you text your zip to 888-777, that's our short code, you will automatically be opted in to receive text message alerts from any public safety agency in your area that has jurisdiction over that zip code that you texted in. So if you live in Philly, you can text 19106. If your grandma's in, Dallas, you can text her zip code If a child who goes to school in LA, you can text that zip code. You can text as many as you want, and you can stay up to date on what's going on in that area if an agency in that area happens to be using Everbridge or Nixle. Those specific examples are accurate because, the Dallas-Fort Worth area does use Everbridge Nixle. LA does use Everbridge Nixle. The great thing about zip code opt-in is that it works off of a network effect. So not only are you automatically opting into a lot of notifications, but it's sort of like those Russian nesting egg dolls that you may be familiar with, where let's say, I live right now just outside of the city in a small town called Warminster. If I were to text my zip code, which is 18974 to 888-777, I will get notifications from Warminster PD, Warminster Township, Bucks County Office of Emergency Management, because Warminster's in Bucks County, and Pennsylvania State Police. I can at any time go in and tweak and customize my subscriptions and say, well, you know what, I don't want to receive anything from the state police, but definitely from the county and my local area. Here's an example. If you lived in Monrovia or Arcadia, you would filter up also to receive stuff from LA County Sheriff. Keywords work the same way. So let's say you're doing something, around Thanksgiving with a pumpkin fest, and you want to invite people down and do some sort of crowd control or let people know about detours in the area. Create a keyword. They pull out their phone. They text Pumpkin Fest or National Night Out. Or, if you're in Cleveland and the Cavaliers win something or the Indians win something, and you're doing a parade, or Chicago. I don't want to play favorites here. The Cubs win, and you're having a big parade. Hey, text, Cubs to 888-777, and now you can start sending out information. And you can increase your opt-in because you're lowering that hurdle for people signing up. If you're sending them online, if you're telling them to download an app, you're not going to capture as many people. But if you're just saying, hey, take 5 seconds, pull out your phone and text this to that, they're going to do it, or they're much more likely to do it. We've been used for gatherings, we've been used for events, we've been used for crises all over the country. Actually, the city of Philadelphia, Department of Emergency Management, did tell everyone to text papal visit to 888-777 when Pope Francis came to town. And over the course of, I believe it was three to 5 days, they got something like 11,000 people opted in. Versus their Twitter and Facebook, which they also used fantastically, but it took them 5 to 7 years to get, that many opt-ins over time, as opposed to just saying, hey, text a papal visit. Used for concerts. Sergeant Gripp mentioned those fusion centers and the JICs, the Joint Information Committee, I believe it stands for, over in the Bay Area. They got together around the Super Bowl, and a couple dozen agencies, police departments said, hey, everyone who's coming to the area, text SB50. If you're going to be in the area, we're going to send you notifications. And you can see even from this, a July 4th celebration down in the Maryland area in Montgomery County, they told everyone to text this keyword, MoCo July 4th. The opt-ins far outpaced any sort of online memberships, any online subscriptions, so they were able to send texts throughout the week and day of leading up to the event and during the event. City of Hoboken was sending out text alerts when the deadly train crash happened last month. And I'll leave you with this example. Down in the state of Florida, during Hurricane Matthew recently, they created a keyword called SL Prepares. They told everyone, hey, text SL Prepares to 888-777, and we're going to keep you up to date on the track of the storm, recovery efforts that's going on. They shared that on social media. The media got behind that and started telling all of their viewers and readers, hey, everyone text SL Prepares to 888-777. Within 10 minutes, they got 25,000 opt-ins along the track of that storm. By noon that first day, because the governor's press conference where he announced it was early in the morning, they had 100,000 opt-ins. By the weekend, they had reached 400,000 opt-ins, and they were sending about, I think, 18 messages in the first 48 hours. Just, again, track of the storm, board up your windows. If you haven't evacuated, evacuate. If you can't, hunker down. Here's some tips. Here's some information that they were sending out through their Alert FL account through Everbridge Nixle. Again, that was that keyword, FL prepare. So it's a way to get folks opted in quickly. And again, social media is a very, very, very important part of this, because it's a segment of your population who lives on Twitter, who lives on Facebook. We need to speak their language. We need to reach them the way they like to be reached. We can't leave them out or assume that they're just going to, wholesale move over to texting a keyword or going to a portal. But you can send out notifications to them because you just link up your Twitter account. You link up your Facebook account. So now when you're sending a text, when you're sending an email, it's going to hit them as well as all these other channels that we talked about as well. One of these channels at the bottom, and I'll just take one more minute of your time because I know we've gone over. One of these channels is Google Alerts. Everbridge, through the Nixle acquisition, has the ability to, every alert notification that you send out, and that's one of our priority levels, will show up on Google's homepage if someone searches a certain key term. So if they're down in Florida and they're searching Hurricane Matthew, floating at the top of those Google results are going to be your alert notification. It shows up on Google search results. It'll show up as a dot on Google Maps. It'll also show up on Google Now right now. So you may have 10,000 people following you or 5,000 people opting to receive your text messages. But now you technically could have billions of eyeballs around the world who are flocking to Google to get information about how is Hurricane Matthew going to affect my home, on the Northeast coast, or, my family lives there, but I'm over in, Italy and I'm going to go on there. They'll see your notifications. We also have a partnership, and I'm going to end it on this, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Every notification that you send out through Everbridge Nixle is fed to NCMEC. They run keyword searches on every notification. We send out, millions of notifications. They do keyword searches for juvenile, for missing, for endangered, for teenager, for runaway, and a dozen other terms. When they get a hit, they open up a case file, and if it's something that fits their criteria where they can help, they will pick up the phone and call the authoring agency, you guys, and say, how can we help? How can we mobilize our resources to help you bring back this missing child, or help you, in this case with this runaway or this teenager? We've had a number of success stories through the couple of years that we've had this partnership in place. Missing children, missing autistic children, teenagers who've run away or who have been abducted, and sort of help bring these kids back. It's why we do what we do, and it's something that you can benefit from. This is my last slide. So between being a media hub for social media like Twitter and Facebook, like the Philadelphia Police Department uses so wonderfully, through easy opt-in, through text messaging alerts for your community, and these partnerships with appearing on Google and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we do hope that if you're not using Everbridge and Nixle, you will consider using it, and giving us a call, or contacting us through Smile, through Lori, through Law. We would love to speak with you. This is my last slide, and I will stop talking. So thank you for your time, and Lori, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was brilliant. And thank you again to Everbridge Nixle for allowing us to hear from you and to hear from Eric today. And before you go, Jim, we have a question really quickly here from in the Spectrum Canada, wanting to know if you're texting, subscribing by text with zip codes works for Canadian zip codes.
That's a great question, and that is one of the most common questions that we do have if we are international. For the text message opt-in, where you can text your zip code or text a keyword, that currently is continental United States, but we are looking to expand that in 2017. When we do, we will make an announcement about that. But currently, the text message opt-in is U.S. carriers only, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you though for that. And the looks like the questions that we have coming up here are all for Eric. So hopefully you're still awake, Eric. And the first
Oh, I'm here. Of course.
the first one is thanks for still being there. This is from Kyle. During a major event, how do you manage your multiple social platforms, and which do you view as the most effective? And I don't necessarily think he means your 60 Twitter accounts, but the various platforms.
Sure. That's a very good question. I would say that it actually varies from event to event. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know that Facebook has the largest amount of users, but the age range and the demographics of it can kind of vary. I mean, there's times where we'll have like the Welcome America event, which takes place on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. We've had it here the past few years. I'm sorry, not the Welcome America, the Made in America, which is a concert which is run by, oh my God, I am drawing a blank right now. That guy. The guy's married to Beyonce. This is embarrassing. Anyway.
Jay-Z.
Jay-Z, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, Jay-Z's.
Yeah, I am a Philly guy.
Oh my God, boy, look at me. I just got real old real quick. Yeah, it's a concert, a 2-day concert which is put on by Jay-Z, and it attracts musical acts from throughout the world, and incredibly large crowds come down here. And these are our newer acts, and as such, the crowd tends to lean towards your millennial groups. And based off of that, we just started looking, well, what are people using? Where is the chatter happening? I mean, we always kind of have an ear to the ground, and in events like that, we see information will probably travel faster if we put it out on Instagram. And that's actually skewing more towards Snapchat. So there are, I know this is a very, I'm giving you a really non-committal answer as to which are the best, but I always say Facebook and Twitter. Those are your two go-tos no matter what. And obviously there's a number of things that have to be monitored. I just want to make it clear that I'm not also monitoring for intel. If I should happen to come across something which could be dangerous or something that needs immediate attention, I get it. But we have folks that actually work down in our Delaware Valley Intelligence Center who monitor social media for, very different reasons than I do. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's Facebook, Twitter, and as you start skewing towards events that attract younger crowds, the messaging will probably go to Instagram and then down to Snapchat.
Okay, and I want to follow up, and I want to let our attendees know we've lost just a couple, so most people are still with us, and we're going to go ahead and answer questions at least probably till 2:30, or if we end before then, it'll be because we're out of questions. But let's say we'll go till 2:30 for anybody who wants to hang in there with us, if you're able to, Eric. And Jim. Sorry, Jim. So here, this question is for you, Eric, and it's from Carrie. I found that with all algorithm changes on Facebook that it's becoming a less and less reliable social media network for getting out timely information. We now primarily use Twitter for breaking news. Are others finding this true as well? What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I happen to agree with that, and the worst part of their ever-changing algorithm is you never know what to believe with it. I mean, the one thing that you can believe is it seems like less people are receiving your content. Now, what percentage of your followers that actually is, hey, that's that's as good as anyone's guess. But yeah, it's very true. But I mean, let's face it, Facebook, they're a business. They have to make money, and their way of making money is they want you to boost these posts.
Right.
Now, I can tell you right now that the Philadelphia Police Department, we have never boosted a post, ever, not a single one. And it makes things a lot more challenging now as far as getting information out there because, yeah, we can't rely on it getting out to folks in the way that it used to. So that is very true. We also, when we put something out, it is going out on Twitter and Facebook. It's happening at the same time when we post 100% of the time if it's something that we want to put out there. Now, depending on what the situation might be and just how much we want that information to be spread, that's when you have to start getting a little bit creative. That's when you might have to go and, if it's on Facebook, put something a little bit off the wall, post something. I'll just leave it at that. post something that people aren't expecting.
Right. I think
And
that's really, yeah, really great advice, Eric. And I think that,
yeah.
when it comes to real-time news, Twitter's always been the go-to, but people like their
Hmm.
Facebook because a lot of police departments have a much larger following on Facebook than they do Twitter. So they generally tend to think, well, we'll go to Facebook. But I think that, she's right. You'd use Twitter because it's also, it's the closest thing to real-time that's out there. But you don't want to ignore
Hmm.
Facebook. So our
Very
next
true.
Exactly. So our next question is from Teresa. Can you speak to how you integrate slash coordinate your social media response with your traditional media response? For example, when you're out live streaming, how do you ensure consistency with the PIO on the same topic?
Oh, that's okay. That's a very good question. Now, obviously, when I'm out live streaming, I'm going to give the PIO a heads up as to where I'm going to be and a general idea of what I'm going to say and what I'm planning on saying. Now, the beautiful thing with a live stream is it's live. So if something goes wrong, or if something goes afoul, or if it turns into a situation where it's out of control, and quite frankly, I don't know what is happening, I'm going to end that live stream. So yeah, there is a balance that has to take place. Obviously, you don't want to have folks learning about something that could be earth-shattering on a Facebook live stream and then have the people back at the office be completely and totally blind to it. And that's the absolute biggest part of anybody for our department during their training when they use social media for us. It's just you need to notify us. Do not blindside the people at the Public Information Office. We need to know what's happening. So again, it's talking ahead of time. It's letting folks know your people who are going to be receiving these phone calls and these emails from the traditional media asking what the heck they're seeing online, so they're not blindsided. Just giving them a heads up, and if something happens, notify them as soon as possible. Notify them as soon as possible. But so far, it hasn't really bit us in the butt. We've had a few instances here and there where people that we've had tweeting on our behalf from the districts and some of our individual accounts where they've run a little bit afoul of our guidelines, but nothing that's really been end of the world stuff. Just little things like that you make the mistake once and you probably won't make it again.
Okay. This question comes from my friend Crystal from right across the river from where I'm at right now. I read an article a while back where Eric talked about how PPD has Snapchat, but why it has not been fully implemented. I would love to hear what they have learned through their use and trial of it.
Well, hi, Crystal. Thanks. Yeah, well, to say, if you've read any article where I mentioned Snapchat, I'm usually saying the same thing afterwards, which is something like, I wish I could unsee a lot of the things that I've seen on Snapchat. Right now, we use it because people are. I mean, this sounds like a canned answer, but we have to be on there because folks are on there, especially young people. I mean, it's one of, if not the fastest growing social media platform right now. And our thing always is, if folks are on there, they shouldn't have to wonder whether or not they can reach the Philadelphia Police Department on there. We're going to be there for them. And right now, what it mainly comes down to with Snapchat is time. Snapchat is a really, really amazing tool, and while some of its features have begun to appear in some of the other social media platforms, it's still relatively unique, and like anything, it's like learning a new language. So the kind of content that would need to be created for Snapchat, it's just it requires an amount of time which we don't have right now. I mean, I hate to say it, but in all honesty, I'm the one who's running these accounts. So something's got to give sooner or later. You can only be in so many places at once before the overall quality, whatever that means, begins to suffer. So right now, it's kind of, I don't want to. I want to be there if people want to reach us. If they want to get a hold of us, they can. But I don't want to start putting out half-baked content right now. So hopefully in the future we'll get some more manpower, and we can dedicate some more time to it. Because if you can. If you have the ability to do so, Snapchat should 100% be on your radar.
Okay. Jeremy, do you have any software to monitor social media proactively? And then this person goes on to refer to the recent news about a couple of the software monitoring companies being cut off by Twitter, mostly Twitter, with getting with regard to getting access to their data because they're policed, and doing surveillance with it. And I just want to say that
Sure.
we're not really expecting that to have an across-the-board impact to all the social media monitoring tools. But in any case, she's referring to that event, and she's saying, if so, has that decision uh, impacted your proactive work? And if so, how are you managing that?
Well, I mean, speaking for myself, I like to say that what I do for the department it comes from more of a marketing and customer service angle than some of the investigatory work that our other folks are doing. So on my day-to-day, I use TweetDeck. I use TweetDeck for Twitter, and that is it. And now I know that the event that is being spoken about here was the one where I believe it was Geophedia or one of the similar services has Twitter's API had been available to them, and they were basically using their information for nothing that was illegal, but they were able to gather information from Twitter so easily and in such massive amounts that it wasn't a good look for Twitter, is what it came down to. So now there's this concern out there that Twitter obviously wants to have their tools that are available to people so they can make product out of it, but at the same time they don't want people to think that if I'm on Twitter, the cops are going to be spying on me at all times. So yeah, there is some concern out there among police organizations where where could this lead? But again, speaking for myself, I use the same tools that are available to anybody out there, and I'm not using them from a place of trying to find the next big event before it happens. Now there's other folks that are out there that do that, and I'd be lying if I said that the Philadelphia Police Department doesn't take part in that. But we'll have to see where that goes. I mean, these things change every day, and when I read that last week or whenever that came out, I figured, wow, I'm surprised it took this long. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine what the future is going to hold on that.
Okay. We have people asking for things like Jim's contact information. Jim, we're going to email that to everybody because you have 2 or 3 questions on that. And the inspector
Great.
saying he'd love to be kept up to date on when he can text in his zip code. And so I'm sure you'll send him that information. And somebody else.
Yes, and please feel free, Lori, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please feel free to do exactly that. Share all my contact information, email address, phone number. I'm happy to answer any specific, individual questions anyone may have on the technology or pricing. I'm
going to email everybody with that just as soon as this webinar is over. And then Stephanie is also asking. Yeah, Stephanie is also asking for the link to the Carlisha Freeland Gaither video, Eric. And so let's just say, Eric, you send that to me and I'll send that out to everybody too. So let's end on this question from Kyle, and that is, what background did you have prior to this social media assignment? What training have you received since then and continue to receive to make sure you're at the top of your game? Because you obviously are at the top of your game.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, prior to doing this, I had never worked in social media or any form of communications professionally. I ended up here, like a lot of people do, by being at the right place at the right time. And prior to becoming a police officer, I was in college, and I was going for marketing. But I always wanted to be a cop. I'll make this story as quickly as possible. 9/11 happened. I had an opportunity to become a police officer in Philadelphia. I dropped out of school. I took it. And years later, I always played music when I was growing up. And as such, I played in a number of cover bands, and it's not so much if you've ever struggled in a cover band or had the pain of listening to one, it's not so much what you play or how you play, it's just how well you market yourself and the kind of show that you put on once you're there. So I would handle the social media marketing for any cover band that I played in, and as luck would have it, in 2012, the current PIO, Lieutenant John Stanford, spokesperson for the department, he got transferred to the 22nd District, where I was working as a tactical sergeant, and he came in one day, and before work, of course, I was goofing around on the computer, putting out some marketing content on social media for my band. And he thought it was hilarious, and I was, just going on a rant as to why I do it and the benefits of doing it this way. And the conversation quickly turned to the police department, the Philadelphia Police Department, and I was talking about how I thought that not just our department, but government agencies around the country were going about this completely and totally wrong by playing it safe. And we ended up working together for a few months. He ends up becoming the public information officer, and a few months later, after he got here, he gave me a call back at the district and said, all that crap you were talking about social media, would you mind coming up here and talking to our director of communications about it and the police commissioner? I came up, told him what I had in mind, and here I am. Now, as far as staying on top of it, I think the best way to do it, I mean, obviously, we have tons of luminaries in the field, what people like to call influencers. They're out there. There's every book, there's every class, you can do all these things, but I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to you need to be a sponge, you need to see what other people are doing, you need to see why they were successful, you need to try and figure out if they failed, why they failed, and it's just keeping an open mind about things and not being afraid to take risks. And that's what I tell people all the time. It's a little bit different for me. I'm a civil service employee. I screw up, worst thing that happens is they kick me out of here and I'm pushing around a patrol car again. There's people who, if they take some risks in the private sector with how they're marketing their company, they're on the unemployment line and they're unhireable. But I tell people all the time, it's not about being brave. I look at it as it's survival. And there's just so much content out there that needs to be heard. How can I be heard while minimizing damage as much as possible? And that sounds really basic, but that's what it comes down to. And that they might we've been fairly successful here, and I'm grateful for that. But tomorrow people may completely and totally tune us out, and if that happens, hey, I can read around, I can ask around, I can say, hey, what's going wrong? What do you think? Why do you think people are tuning us out? And it might just be me. People have had enough, and in that case, we'll move on to the next person. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, it's just keeping an open mind and not being afraid to take risks. And knock on wood, so far so good.
Well, I think you've done a tremendous job, Eric. I wouldn't be having you on this webinar today if you were lousy at it, obviously. And I can tell you that I can see what I see with you is your personality really comes through, and that's so important. That you are the real deal, and people feel like they know you because you allow them to, and
Sure.
you're just really great at that. And the people who, even the guy who asked that question, he does the same thing. He's just as good at it. So anyway,
Thank you so much.
I should hook you two up. You can compare notes. But,
Please.
I want to thank you so much for your very valuable time. I know you've got stuff going down, and we've taken up a couple hours here. Thank you, everyone who joined. You'll all get the link. And also, Bridget was asking about the SafeCam program. That will also be some information that we'll send out an email to everybody. Thanks again, and we'll see you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.